Hey Vegas, I'm Emily Connor Cooper and welcome to Legends and Laughs, where laughter is always on the menu and the stories are bigger than life itself.
Now, I know a thing or two about show business. You could say it's in my blood. I was born and raised in Texas, found my way to New York City to study at NYU, and I landed a job as a producer with CBS, NBC, and Broadway. And well, life became a lot more interesting when I met Pat Cooper at the Friars Club. From the hustle and bustle of New York City to the glitz and glamour of Las Vegas, I've had the privilege of being surrounded by some of the funniest and most talented people in the world. And today, you'll hear from people who knew Pat, who Pat knew, and in ways you won't hear anywhere else.
So sit back and relax and get ready to hear some stories that'll make you laugh, cry, and maybe even scratch your head a little. This is Legends and Laughs, where the humor never stops and the legends never fade. Hi everybody, welcome to Legends and Laughs. I'm Emily Connor Cooper, and today one of my favorite guests is joining us, Mr. Pete Barbutti, a legendary resident of Las Vegas since 1960. Pete Barbutti, welcome to the show. It's nice to see you again. Thanks for being back. One of the things I wanted to ask you about today is the Joe Williams Jazz Ensemble UNLV that you recently, I actually attended it with my mother. It's an annual show. And it's quite unbelievable how these students come together and put on this amazing jazz show.
Yeah, the band has won awards all over the country. This is the jazz band, the big band. They have there are about 5 or 6 of the guys who write amazing arrangements for the band that are like big time.
I'll tell you, Pat worked with Joe Williams at the Fremont.
Yeah.
That was actually right after he did the 56 shows opening for Sinatra at the Sands when with Quincy Jones and Count Basie.
The Basie band, yeah.
And people actually made fun of him. They said, Pat, how can you go downtown and work with Joe Williams at the Fremont after? He said, look, it's a gig, and I love Joe Williams, and I want to do this. I want to do this show. Yeah, but this show, it's an annual show, and it benefits the jazz ensemble there. And you were the MC.
They pay for a student's entire education for everything, for his dormitory or whatever.
That was in his will, is that right?
Yeah, it was in Joe and his lovely wife's name, Jill, who was...
Clint Holmes was there, and Laura Taylor, and just some wonderful...
And over the years, I mean, Jack Jones did it, Ben Vereen did it, and everybody who was near town, who was a good singer, did it. But you have to be a good singer to sing that kind of music too.
Yeah, Pete, I got to talk to you about last May was your 90th birthday.
Yeah.
Not only that, you performed 3 nights in a row at the Ahern Hotel, and you blew it out of the park. I got to tell you, I was there. I saw it. You played the piano with your nose. You did your act. It was like you were doing it 25, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And you still got it. And I'm not surprised. I mean, you are just like you were back then.
That's a comedy room, and almost everybody does it in one. That means they just stand there alone. But, I wanted it to be more like the old Vegas lounges, where you had a group behind you, and in among the humor you're doing, you do musical humor, too. So I enjoyed it very much. They're good people to work for.
But it was really special to be there that night. Pete, I obviously have to ask you about Shecky Green, because we could talk about Shecky till the cows come home all day.
Yeah, he was special.
But he was really your best friend, right?
Yeah, I think so. He was a big help to me. Our original meeting was bizarre. I went to see him when I was working in Chicago with this group, the Millionaires. We were there for a long time at a club. And the old guys would come in and say, he reminds us of Shecky Green. I never heard of him because he wasn't on TV, They said, oh, he's in Las Vegas, he's making big money. It's great. So I came out and I'd see him walking through the room and everything, and I said, well, he looks kind of regular. And then I went to see him at the Riviera, and he did everything wrong. He had no opening, he had no closing, he had no middle, and I never laughed so hard in my life. I was crying, I was in pain, I was laughing. And I wanted to meet him, but the situation never arose. So I was traveling with Nat King Cole, as did Shecky for years too. and we're at Lake Tahoe, and Nat Cole said, after the show at Harris, he said, let's go over to Wagon Wheel, Harvey's, and see Shecky. We'll get in a couple minutes after the show starts. I said, okay. So we go over, and it was in their main room at the time, and it was full. The room was packed for Shecky, obviously. And so I walk in, Nat King Cole and me. Well, who didn't know Nat King Cole? One of the most recognized people in the world. So everybody saw him, and Shecky said, ladies and gentlemen, I introduce a good friend of mine in the back of the room, Mr. Nat King Cole. And he says, I was over to see your show, Nat. It's just great. I loved it. And he didn't mention me. And I was sitting there with Nat. And I thought, I guess he didn't like what I did, and I was crushed because I wanted him to like me more than anybody in the world. And then halfway through the show, he says, you know, there's a young comic. He's just starting out. He's with Nat Cole. And if I tell you how much I enjoyed him and how good he was, every time I tell a joke, you'll be turning around to see if he's laughing at it. So I said, we can't have that. So he jumps off the stage. He runs the entire length of the room, grabs me by the collar, and takes me up on the stage and puts a chair next to him. He says, now sit down there. Now they don't have to turn around and look at you to see you laugh. And he finished the show, and we became friends after that. He was very special.
He was a genius. He was a comic genius.
And he also could do the dialects. I mean, he would,
yeah.
I went to his house once, Joe Delaney and I, to do the Night of Stars, and Shecky met me, and I was following him into the kitchen, and all of a sudden he was Italian. He was an old Italian. He had his shoulders changed, his body changed, and he walked. Then Joe Delaney showed up, and all of a sudden he was very Irish. I mean, he was a chameleon.
He was amazing.
He was just a special guy. He was a great singer. I mean, he had a good pitch. He had a great voice. His dialects were unbelievable, and he could go out on stage. You know, they talk about this comic or that comic. But most comics today, after they make their splash on the Tonight Show or something, they get a series. They go into television, they go into movies. Because with television and with movies, you know, TV, you have laugh tracks, you have camera angles, you have, you know. And with movies, you work twice a year, and you make the same amount of money you would make out doing stand-up comedy. But stand-up comedy, you can't quit it for a year and then go back. You have to do it all the time. You know,
That's what Pat said.
Yeah, you have to do it. You have to practice it all the time. It's like playing piano or playing trumpet. You can't do it casually.
Because you'll lose your rhythm. That's what Pat used to say.
You lose the feel, and there's a certain thing or groove where you get in and you just feel it moving along. Yeah.
Well, speaking of the Tonight Show, you did the Tonight Show 38 times around then, right, with Johnny Carson. And there was actually one night where you were a guest when Shecky was a guest host. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yes. There's a photo on the internet of that.
That's right, yeah.
It's a great photo.
I talked to Shecky about it. He said, I was terrible. Shecky didn't prepare. You know, some of the guest hosts, and I've done it with a bunch of them, some of them have the understanding or the brains to know that you're talking about a small audience for the Tonight Show is 20 million. And when Carson's on a Friday, it's always 25 million people going to see it. And some people don't do any preparation. Some people do. Shecky didn't do any. He was partying and, you know, living the Shecky Green life.
Yeah, falling into fountains and things.
Yeah, right. So he didn't do...
and jumping on crap tables.
Oh, man, he was... I tell you, he was something. They had a jail cell that was called Shecky's downtown because he would...
Like Ernest T?
Yeah, Ernest T. Same kind of guy, man. He was always... and he hated this guy and loved this guy. We talked about when Ed Torrey said, I'm going to bring in a birthday cake. Shecky said, don't bring in a cake. I hate that guy. So they brought in a cake right in the middle of his show. A huge cake, you know, what they call pancakes or with Shecky Graham, and they handed it to Shecky, and Shecky took this beautiful birthday cake, and he said, thank you, Mr. Torrey. Pow! And he slammed it in his own face. He stayed on stage. The cake was falling off his nose, and I mean, he was totally unpredictable,
but a genius.
Oh, and absolutely.
We used to do the breakfasts, you know, at the Green Valley Ranch, and I got to really know him, and he just would come up with these songs off the top of his head that rhymed, and he did it till the end, till his dying day, literally.
Constantly.
Yeah,
I would go in, I would try to get there before the other gang, and I would alert the people because some of them were younger people, they didn't know Shecky Greene was. So I'd say, the guy coming into Shecky Greene, a legendary kind of, most people knew, but some people say, who was that? I say, well, he's coming in and sometimes he'd go from table to table singing. You know, once in a while they'd go to one, people had no idea they were going to call security, have this drunk thrown out, he's singing at our table, you know. But he's the only guy, well, George Carlin, I have to credit him too, the only ones I know who stayed stand-up comics. They didn't go to movies.
Well, Pat did a couple movies, but that was his
he stayed stand-up
comfort
too.
zone.
But that, you can't do it. You can't become a movie star and then once in a while go out and do comedy. You can't do that. He was, Shecky told me once, he said he and Jonathan Winters were stationed on the same ship, an aircraft carrier, in World War II. And my reaction was that, and yet we won with the two of them. Can you imagine the two of them on the same?
You can't make that up.
No, you know.
Pete, I got to ask you about Buddy Hackett,
Yeah,
who was a legendary Vegas guy. He lived, I know where he used to live. He used to live in Paradise Palms over there, had a funky house. There was a funny story that I remember you telling me one time about.
But first, I have to say, Buddy was probably the best clinical comedian that ever lived. Buddy could tell you, change the one word in that sentence, or change this guy's name, and the routine will be funny. He was like two people. Also, the next time you see him, he wouldn't talk to you. You know, Buddy had me thrown out once. I went backstage when he was working there, and he says, no one's allowed backstage when I'm working. I said, I just came by. He said, no. He says, he called security. He says, I have somebody to throw out. I said, you don't have to throw me out, I'll leave. He said, no, you have to be thrown out. So I had to wait till security got there, and the guy opened the door, and I went out, and the guy said, come on back in. I went back. But that was Buddy. He was a character. The thing you're thinking of, the story I told you was, I was sitting with Buddy in his dressing room, and without saying anything, he picked up the phone and asked for a Watts line. That used to be a service where they'd sell you long distance by the hour. Hotels would buy it and big companies. And so he said, let me have it, and he gave the number. And then he just said something and then hung up. And then later on, I said, Buddy, what was that phone call about? He said, what phone call? He said, oh, he says, I know what that is. Buddy was playing golf in a celebrity tournament in California and came off the 18, and they went to the watering hole. They went to the bar. And Buddy put his golf clubs in the trunk, but he put his keys down, and he locked his keys in the trunk. So he went into the bar, and he says, order me a drink. And he went to the phone book, went through the yellow pages, Acme Lock Company or whatever it was. And he called and he said, this is Buddy Hackett, and I locked my keys in the car. Could you come out and get them out? And the woman said, oh, my husband is taking a nap. And she hung up. Well, if that was you or me, we'd go to the next nap. Not Buddy. Buddy called back. He said, you don't understand. I'm Buddy Hackett, and I'm famous, and I have a lot of money. And I can sue you because your ad says 24-hour service. So she said, all right. So she got her husband up, and he got on the phone, and he was groggy. I'm at so-and-so place, and I locked my keys in the car. He said, all right, I'll come out when I get a chance. Buddy said, now tell me when I'll be out there when I got back. So Buddy was bugged. He went back into the bar, and he drank, and finally the guy showed up and went bada-bing, and the trunk opened. He took his keys out. He said, that'll be $50 or whatever. Buddy gave him the $50. And I said to Buddy, when was this? He said, it was about 15 years ago. He says, about 10 times a month, no matter where I am, I call them at 1 or 2 in the morning and get them out of bed. And don't tell them who I am. I just say, is this Acme Lock Company? And they say, yes. And I can go.
He was ruthless.
Oh, he was merciless. I'll tell you, he was, and he and Shecky had this relationship that was so volatile, you never knew if, Buddy carried a gun. He had a permit to carry a gun. You never knew if Buddy was going to shoot Shecky or Shecky was going to kill Buddy. Or, you know, they went to a restaurant in Miami. They both met. They were working. Shecky was at Buddy was at the Diplomat in Dania, and Shecky was at the Fontainebleau, I think. Anyway, which was a smaller room. And Buddy showed up one night at Shecky's suite, and he had the guy let him in. Shecky was downstairs, and Buddy was breaking furniture and being real mean. And somebody said, "You better go up there, Shecky. Your Buddy's in your room." And Shecky went up to his room, and Buddy was in a real foul mood, and he said, "You're telling everybody you outdrew me, and that's not real. Your room is smaller." And Shecky says, "I don't care about that." And Buddy says, "Yeah, well, don't you lie like..." And anyway, he slapped Shecky, and Shecky grabbed him by the wrist and almost broke his... Shecky was a very strong man, almost broke his arms. So they went out to get something to eat. And Shecky was mean to the waitress, and Shecky had... not Shecky, Buddy was mean to the waitress, and Shecky had enough, so he said, I talked to Jack Eglash at the Sahara. I heard Rickles broke your record there. And Buddy, "No, he did not. That's what I heard." So Buddy went and made a phone call and called the Sahara to see if Rickles really broke his record. He hung up. And on the way back, if you remember, the delis in Miami are like the delis in New York. In the middle of the room, they have a table with all the desserts. You know, the cheesecakes this high, the strawberry shortcakes, which are this high, with the whipped cream. And
You're gonna wrap up.
and he ran. And when our buddy went over there and smashed his face in all the desserts just to show that he was in charge.
That's typical. And Pete, let me ask you about Jackie Leonard. His widow lives actually near me, and he died in about what, 73 or 74?
Yeah,
He's been
something
gone
like
quite
that.
a while.
Yeah,
But
he has. He was you know, a very special guy off stage too. He was. I remember working with him in the audience and sat and talked to him, and he was very helpful. He wasn't like a dog eat dog type guy. He was a very special guy, and he was very funny too. I mean, he was just. He was funny.
he was on Ed Sullivan a lot. Is that right?
He was on Sullivan a lot, yeah. And I mean, he was funny to hang with too. He was just a funny person. He was just clever. Everybody heard about it when he went into Lindy's in New York and they had a corned beef sandwich, and the guy said, "Would you like dessert?" And he said, "What have you got?" And the waiter thought he was being clever, said, "I got rhythm." And without taking a beat, he said, "Good, then dance me over some cheesecake." I mean, it was one of those type guys where everybody in New York, was a New Yorker. Yo.
Did you know him out here?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. He was a great guy. He was a good man, and he was a good comic.
So you worked at a lot of the hotels here, right?
Yeah. All of the
All of
old
them?
ones. I think I hit all of the old ones, and then I ended up for a long time at the Sahara.
That's right.
And the first one was the New Frontier, then the Last Frontier, and then the Thunderbird for a while. And then did, conventions at the Riviera, worked the Trop for a while. Well, I think I worked all of the hotels. There was a little one, the San Souci on the Strip. I don't even know what's on that property now, probably the Mirage or something.
Well, one of the things that I have made this show about is the old Vegas and the new Vegas, and the way we all love the old era of Vegas, but it's evolving, and you've seen it all.
Yeah.
If you were here in 1960 and you're here in 2025, you've seen the evolution of it. How does it make you feel? What do you think about it?
Well, it's not as personable as it used to be. And once going down to do the Tonight Show, Peter LaSalle, the producer, called me and said, "Bring the Vegas paper down. We're going to book some Vegas acts." And so I went down and sat in Peter's office for a while, and he took the paper and he opened the paper up and he said, "There aren't any stars here." There was stars in the old
That's
Vegas.
what Pat used to say.
Yeah, there aren't any stars anymore. It's a different world.
Yeah, and Pat said, it used to be magical. You could see the mountains from the Strip, but it's magical in a different way now. And every city changes.
It all happened because of the Mike was the governor here, and when Howard Hughes was in town, and he bought the Desert Inn, but he didn't have a gaming license, so he had to keep the gaming people there to run the casinos, and he wanted to get a license. But the Hughes Corporation was massive.
Yeah.
And Howard Hughes had it structured so that he was not an officer in the company,
Right. I remember
but he
that.
owned all the stock. So if you ever sued the company, he never had to appear because he was reclusive.
Yeah. All right, we'll be right back with more Legends and Laughs after this.
Hey Vegas! Celebrate every day in style at the Composer's Room. From live music to comedy shows, we've got entertainment that'll give you that Las Vegas vibe. Our tavern serves the best drinks in Vegas. Whether you're a cocktail connoisseur or a beer buff, our bartenders got you covered. And let's not forget about the food. Our culinary delights are sure to tantalize your taste buds. Come for the entertainment and stay for the food. Reserve your visit to the Composer's Room today and start celebrating Las Vegas our way.
Looking for a night out that's pure Vegas? Welcome to Jimmy Kimmel's Comedy Club, voted best comedy club in Las Vegas. Located at the Link Promenade, just steps from the High Roller, it's your ticket to big laughs from top comics handpicked by Jimmy Kimmel himself. No two shows are alike. Every night's a headliner, and every seat's a great one. Get your laughs at the best. Jimmy Kimmel's Comedy Club, only in Vegas, only at the Link.
I got to tell you, you were part of the inspiration for me to actually do this show, because we've become good friends through Pat Cooper, my late husband. But riding around in town with you in the car, you just start telling stories. And there was one moment, one day, when I said to myself, I should be recording these, because you just don't stop telling stories all the time. And nobody has stories like you do, especially being a resident of Las Vegas for 65 years, but you were also on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson for, 38 times?
Yeah, something like that.
Well, you clearly have a lot of stories about when you were performing, but you also have a lot of stories of just being an insider here in Las Vegas. And I got to ask you about one particular one.
Sure.
The one in the steam room at the Sands.
Oh, yeah.
Can you just tell us about that
Well, you
one?
have to understand the Rat Pack, too. There was Sinatra, and they were in different frames of mind, too. That was a different era. So Sinatra was still, like, sort of wanted to be like a mob guy, you know. And Dean and Sammy Davis Jr. and Peter Lawford was always hanging around, and Joey Bishop. They put in to just sort of be a comedy relief in there. And they used to come off stage at 1:30, midnight show. They get off stage at 1:30, and they go in their dressing room and change, and then they come out to the lounge and watch Sonny King and Vito Musso, and they watch them for about 2 hours. Then they go in the restaurant and have Chinese food for breakfast. Then they play 18 holes of golf and come back and go to the steam room, take a little nap in the dressing room, and do the show again. It was time to do the show again. I mean, they never saw their hotel room.
Right.
And they were all sitting back there, and Sammy Davis was going to play a joke on them. So he said, hey, you guys mind if I call my buddy Sam in? They said, no, that's fine, Sammy. So Sammy Davis went out. He says, hey, Sam. Well, Sam was a showgirl who was like 6'1" in her stocking feet and with heels. She was like 6'5", bigger than all of them. You know? And she walked in. She had nothing on but the headdress, completely naked, just that big headdress. And she came in, and the funny part was the reaction of all these macho guys quickly grabbed a towel and covered their nakedness up, except for Dean Martin, who got up, put the towel over his arm and walked over to her. He said, will that be a table for one, my dear? Like a formal maitre d'. Dean was unflappable of all those guys, you know, unflappable.
That's fun.
Yeah.
That's a great one. So we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be right back with more stories from Pete Barbutti. We'll be right back.
Vegas! Celebrate every day in style at the Composer's Room. From live music to comedy shows, we've got entertainment that'll give you that Las Vegas vibe. Our tavern serves the best drinks in Vegas. Whether you're a cocktail connoisseur or a beer buff, our bartenders got you covered. And let's not forget about the food. Our culinary delights are sure to tantalize your taste buds. Come for the entertainment and stay for the food. Reserve your visit to the Composer's Room today and start celebrating Las Vegas our way.
Welcome back. We're here with Pete Barbutti today. And Pete, I got to ask you about your relationship with my late husband, Pat Cooper.
Pat.
And I actually met you at the Jerry Lewis Memorial that was at South Point in 2017.
Yeah.
That was before Pat and I actually moved here, or back here. He lived here for 35 years.
Yeah, he lived here for a long time.
We actually have a photo of you with Pat at that memorial.
Yeah, Pat was he was a good friend, and we didn't spend a lot of time together, but the time we spent together, we hung out away from the other performers and comics. And, you know, we talked about his childhood and my childhood, and we talked about how tough sometimes were and how good sometimes were. But he was, there are a lot of comics, but Pat was, he was one that was special. There, you know, there are guys, George Carlin, there are guys who are special that you never forget, you know.
Well, you all
Richard
had a lot
Pryor.
you all had a lot in common because you are Italian. However, there was a significant difference that I noticed because I know you're from Scranton, Pennsylvania,
Yeah.
originally from an Italian family, but unlike Pat's family, your family was apparently very quiet and civilized at the dinner table.
Yeah, they were, and I was lucky. My grandfather came over from a village outside Naples, and then had all the children over here. And of course, everybody in those days, Grandma Barbutti had, let's see, she had 7 children. Actually had 8, and one of them passed away. But she had a whole bunch of kids. And my grandfather bought a house that was a defunct mansion. It was 150 years old when he bought it, before Scranton was Scranton. It's called Slocum Hollow. It was just like farmlands, tobacco fields and everything. Mm-hmm. And he took this big old house, it was huge, and he divided up and he installed, he was good at that, he installed steam heat. There were only fireplaces, and steam heat, and then the running water, and toilets. And, you know, he just fixed it up. And all of the families lived in this one house. And so, and then in the back, there were 2 houses that originally were slaves' quarters when the original owner built it. And the two uncles and aunts lived back there. And so every Sunday, down in the basement of the big house, each one of the family was tasked with doing something. Aunt Genevieve baked all the bread, and Elvira made all the vegetables. We had, you know, our own garden. And my mother, who was actually Irish, my mother made the spaghetti sauce. So, and we had dinner together. The opera played on the radio, and every Sunday it was the same thing. My grandfather made his own wine, like 150 gallons of wine every year. And so there was homemade wine, and there was every single Sunday growing up, we had this thing. There were 3 children from one family and 3 in our family, so there were 6 kids. But all of the adults we all got along, and it was a wonderful way to grow up. And I was the shyest person in the world until my family went in hock, because we were poor, and bought me an accordion. And I started playing the accordion, and that gave me a reason to be in public and to be in front of people, where before I was so shy. I was so shy that I still remember my oldest sister, Clara, when I needed shoes, she would drive me up to the shoe store, which is only a mile, and I wouldn't get out of the car. She'd have to bring the shoes out to try them on.
Wow.
And then bring another pair.
Well,
but I was so shy, but getting into music gave me that
well,
reason.
and you know, Pat grew up in Brooklyn and was telling stories on the street corner and making people laugh.
Yeah.
And then, of course, he ended up driving cabs in New York City.
Which is an education in itself. Yeah.
And that's how he realized that he was able to make people laugh, was because he would just talk in the front seat and the passengers would laugh. But
but he was just funny. It was funny. That was his delivery. You know, we talked about this just before he passed away at Nelson Sardelli's birthday party. Pat was already, you know, starting to have some problems. And he said to me, come on, we'll go and get Nelson and roast him. And we met halfway across the floor, and he did like 6 minutes on Nelson. That was the best 6 minutes he had ever done in his life. It was so compact. There wasn't a wasted syllable.
That was really his last roast.
It
we
was.
have a photo
and
of that.
I was standing next to him. I couldn't even speak. I mean,
Yeah.
it was perfect.
Yeah.
You know, usually when I'm with Pat and he starts that, he gets crazy and starts cursing at everybody. I mean,
Right.
You know, but this
Well,
was like
Nelson
it
was great material, and
Oh, yeah.
it was great. We're out of time now, Pete, but thank you for being with us today, and thank you all for joining us on Legends and Laughs. We'll see you next time.